A Fateful Encounter in Africa. A Singaporean's Journey of the Heart. Before her life-altering journey to Malawi, Sarah Tan lived a meticulously planned existence in a modern HDB flat in Tawapeo, Singapore. In her early 30s, the relentless pace of her marketing job at a multinational corporation in the CBD had brought her material success, a respectable career, a fully paid-up flat, but also a gnawing fatigue that overshadowed any sense of achievement. The dazzling city lights of Orchard Road and the relentless pursuit of KPIs felt increasingly hollow. Is this all there is? She often wondered, gazing out at the glittering Singapore skyline. One evening, scrolling through her social media feed, a post caught her eye, a call for volunteers for a project in Africa. An international aid organization was seeking individuals for medical and educational support in Malawi. A flicker of a long-dormant dream ignited within Sarah. She'd always been moved by documentaries about humanitarian work, imagining herself making a small difference. But the demands of her career and the societal expectations of the Singaporean dream had always kept such thoughts at bay. That night, wrestling with a profound sense of dissatisfaction, Sarah made a decision that would redirect her life's trajectory. I need a new path, she resolved. If not now, then when? The thought blazed like a beacon. She tendered her resignation, a move that shocked her pragmatic parents and concerned colleagues. And after weeks of earnest persuasion, she boarded a flight to Malawi. Her destination was Salima, a district in central Malawi where clean water and basic medical supplies were luxuries, and preventable diseases frequently afflicted the villagers. Sarah was assigned to the medical team, tasked with health education, vaccination support, and childcare. Stepping onto the tarmac at Lilongwe International Airport, the African sun beating down, Sarah felt a potent mix of exhilaration and trepidation. The air itself felt different, ancient and alive. The journey to Salima was long and arduous. After navigating the bustling capital of Lilongwe, a several-hour bus ride over bumpy roads followed. The landscape unfurling outside her window was a stark contrast to the urban density of Singapore. Here, vast, open plains stretched under an impossibly blue sky, dotted infrequently by small homesteads and trading posts. Gone were the packed MRT trains, the towering skyscrapers, and the cacophony of hawker centers. Upon arrival, she was greeted by Eva, the local project coordinator, a petite but formidable middle-aged Malawian woman whose eyes radiated energy and warmth. Muli Bwanji, Sarah, welcome to Malawi. We are so happy to have you, Eva said, her English fluent, followed by a surprisingly accurate ni hao ma that made Sarah smile. Zikamo Kwambiri, Eva. I'm excited to be here and learn, Sarah replied, grasping Eva's offered hand, a mix of apprehension and anticipation churning within her. Loading her luggage onto Eva's sturdy pickup truck, they set off for the village. Each jolt on the unpaved road seemed to echo the nervous flutter in Sarah's heart, a blend of curiosity and anxiety about this unfamiliar land. Her first glimpse of the village was of vibrant pastel-colored murals, adorning the walls of small buildings, a collaborative effort, Eva explained, between previous volunteers and the village children. Children with sun-kissed skin and bright smiles waved enthusiastically, calling out hello, or Moni. Their infectious joy began to chip away at Sarah's lingering doubts. What can I truly offer here? Can I make a difference? The question still lingered, but a new energy started to bloom. Sarah dived into her work with the medical team. Days were spent checking on villagers' health, administering basic first aid, and assisting with vaccinations. A significant part of her role was education, patiently explaining the importance of soap and clean water, demonstrating proper hygiene practices. For many families struggling with low incomes and limited access to information, these simple lessons were vital. Caring for young children and tending to the elderly filled her days, which passed with surprising speed. Evenings at the volunteer quarters were a world away from her plugged-in life in Singapore. With electricity available only sporadically, laptops and smartphones took a backseat. Instead, Sarah found herself gazing at star-strewn skies, clearer and more brilliant than she had ever imagined, or sharing stories and laughter with fellow volunteers and local staff. The language barrier was initially significant. While English and Chichewa were official languages, many villagers, especially in more remote areas, spoke very little English. Sarah's own Singlish-inflected English sometimes caused amusement, but with expressive gestures, a rapidly expanding vocabulary of basic Chichewa phrases, and a great deal of patience, communication began to flow. One day, while assisting with vaccinations, she noticed a young boy whose mobility was severely hampered. Learning he was an orphan living alone, Sarah made it a point to visit his small hut, checking on his nutrition and living conditions. The experience brought into sharp focus the abundance she had often taken for granted. Back in Singapore, she began to understand that helping wasn't about grand gestures, but about consistent presence, a shared smile, and providing support where it was most needed. A few days later, during a basic health education session for the community, a young man caught Sarah's attention. He was strikingly tall, with well-defined muscles glistening with a light sheen of sweat on his dark skin. When he smiled, his eyes crinkled into warm crescents. He had arrived late, slipping quietly into a seat at the front, listening intently, and occasionally offering to translate complex points into Chichewa for the older attendees. After the session, as Sarah was tidying up her materials, he approached her. "Zikamo for the lesson," he said, his English accented but earnest. "My name is Baku." Sarah, usually reserved, felt a surprising lack of her usual shyness. "Oh, hello. I'm Sarah," she replied, a warm smile spreading across her face. "I'm glad it was helpful." Baku's grin widened as he extended a hand. "Many in the village are happy to see you. The children, especially, are very curious about the things you teach." From that day on, Baku often appeared to help the volunteer team. He would assist with carrying supplies or offer his old, but reliable bicycle. When transport was needed to reach elderly villagers in more distant parts of the community, Sarah found herself increasingly curious about him, and their conversations grew more frequent and natural. Baku shared his story. He had shouldered family responsibilities from a young age after his father passed away, and his mother fell ill with a chronic condition. He cared for his two younger siblings, juggling small-scale farming and any odd jobs he could find. He yearned to continue his education beyond primary school, but lack of funds had forced him to drop out. Yet, he never complained or seemed bitter. Instead, he was passionate about helping others and had even started an informal class, teaching local children basic literacy and numeracy. The children adored him, calling him Afanzitsi Baku, Teacher Baku. "I want to teach them more," Baku said one day, his eyes shining. "I didn't get much education, but I want things to be different for them." Hearing his words, Sarah felt a pang in her chest. She recalled her own life in Singapore, so often driven by competition and efficiency, leaving her feeling jaded. Here was Baku, facing immense obstacles, yet practicing kindness and generosity with a quiet dignity. His gaze held a profound warmth that resonated deeply with Sarah. As time went on, Sarah and Baku spent more and more time together. They would traverse the village, checking on children's health and nutrition, delivering medication door to door. Sometimes, they made long treks to the nearest clinic or pharmacy for supplies. The humid heat was relentless, and occasionally, they'd be caught in sudden downpours, trudging through muddy pots. One day, a crucial delivery of medicine was needed in a hilly area inaccessible by truck. Baku, without hesitation, volunteered. Watching him expertly balance the heavy load on his head, his hands also full, as he led the way, Sarah felt an unfamiliar prickling at the back of her eyes. They shared the simple packed lunch Sarah had prepared, a welcome respite on their challenging climb. "I'm sorry, this is so tough," Sarah would say. Baku would always flash his disarming smile. "No, Sarah. I am happy if the children and the elders are well. That is enough." They once shared a meal at a small, rustic shelter. Baku roasted some maize he had harvested himself, serving it with a sprinkle of salt. It was simple, yet delicious. Sharing jokes and observations, their eyes would occasionally meet, sparking spontaneous laughter. Even without perfect verbal understanding, a deeper connection was forming. Sarah found herself seeing Baku in a new, special light. However, their growing closeness did not go unnoticed. In the tight-knit community of the village and within the volunteer group, their interracial and intercultural bond drew attention. One well-meaning but cautious volunteer pulled Sarah aside. "Sarah, be careful. Getting too involved with locals can lead to complications. Remember, we're only here for a set period." Conversely, some villagers whispered amongst themselves, "Is that Asian woman using Baku?" Some speculated, while others baselessly suggested she was a front for foreign interests. These rumors and misunderstandings hurt both Sarah and Baku, though they never spoke of it directly to each other. Instead, they found solace in shared glances of understanding. When the weight of unspoken judgment felt heavy, they offered quiet support. If Sarah was found teary-eyed in the quiet of her room after a difficult day, Baku would often appear the next morning with a freshly roasted sweet potato or a ripe mango. No words needed. These small gestures gave Sarah the strength to persevere. One afternoon, news arrived that Baku's mother had suddenly collapsed. Sarah wanted to rush to her side, but the remote location of Baku's home and lack of immediate transport made it difficult. Baku had already left. Frantically, Sarah explained the situation to Eva, who helped arrange a vehicle. After a difficult journey, Sarah finally reached Baku's home. His mother was suffering from a high fever and severe abdominal pain. Basic medical intervention was desperately needed, but facilities were non-existent. The antipyretics and first aid kit Sarah had brought provided temporary relief, but it was clear she needed hospital care. The nearest proper hospital, however, was a considerable distance from Salima, and the costs of transport and treatment were daunting. Baku's home was a very small, simple structure, its thin corrugated iron roof offering minimal protection. It was here he cared for his mother and 2 younger siblings. When Sarah offered the modest provisions, she had brought some rice, cooking oil, and dried fish. Baku could barely manage a zikamo, his face etched with worry as he stared at the earthen floor. The resilience in his eyes was clouded by despair. That night, Sarah worked tirelessly, trying to arrange transport and funds. She considered using her own savings, but voluntary guidelines restricted direct personal financial aid. Other volunteers rallied, and Eva reached out to local community groups and churches to start a collection. Miraculously, by the next evening, enough had been gathered to hire a truck and transport Baku's mother to the hospital. Through this ordeal, a profound sense of compassion and tenderness for Baku blossomed in Sarah's heart. The weight of his responsibilities was immense. How much can one person bear? She wondered, and how much can I truly share this burden? The experience was a crucible, forging a deeper maturity within her. A few weeks later, another crisis struck. An outbreak of a contagious illness swept through the village. Medical supplies in Salima were quickly depleted, necessitating an urgent trip across the border to a hospital in Mozambique for an emergency restock. With no official vehicles readily available, Baku, Sarah, and a few other volunteers had to travel to a nearby town to procure a truck. Crossing the border was a complex affair, fraught with paperwork and potential diplomatic friction between Malawi and Mozambique, since they weren't traveling on official diplomatic visas. Eva worked around the clock to prepare the necessary documents. Sarah was tasked with accompanying the team to the border post to deliver the paperwork, while Baku volunteered for translation and logistics. After successfully collecting the medicine and heading back, an unexpected torrential downpour began. The roads, already poor, turned into impassable rivers of mud. Their truck became dangerously bogged down. With night falling and the rain showing no sign of abating, the group had no choice but to set up a makeshift camp beside the truck and wait out the storm. One volunteer began to show signs of hypothermia, and food supplies dwindled. Throughout the ordeal, Baku remained a pillar of strength, sharing his meager rations and offering words of encouragement. Sarah, though frightened and anxious, drew strength from his unwavering spirit. As the storm finally subsided at dawn, they emerged from their damp shelter to survey the muddy landscape. They exchanged a small, weary smile. The delay was significant, but they were together and they would endure. One evening, after the emergency supplies had been safely delivered and distributed in Salima, Sarah sat alone by a small bonfire crackling in the volunteer compound's yard. Baku approached and sat quietly beside her. Stars glittered intensely in the black velvet sky, and the chirping of crickets filled the air. For a long while, they sat in comfortable silence, watching the flames dance. Then, Baku spoke. "My mother is much better now. Zikamo Kwambiri, Sarah. Thank you so much." "I didn't do much, Baku. Without you," he said, turning to look directly at her, his gaze earnest, "I would have been lost." He paused, then, as if making a profound decision, he continued, his English careful but clear. "Sarah and Dimakukandani, I have strong feelings for you." Sarah's heart leaped. That this remarkable young man from this unfamiliar land could feel so deeply for her felt both surreal and incredibly moving. In that moment, she acknowledged the truth she had been sensing for weeks. Her own feelings for Baku had transcended mere compassion or friendship. This was love, yet love in the face of reality presented a heavy burden. Sarah's volunteer term was dwindling, she had only a few months left. She was expected back in Singapore, back to her life, her family. Baku's life was rooted in Salima, with his family, his siblings, his community. Sarah was torn. Is it fair to nurture such deep feelings in a place I'm destined to leave? She agonized. What happens when I go back to Singapore? As the time for her departure neared, Sarah, with a heavy heart, shared her turmoil with Baku. Your feelings for me mean the world, Baku, and I will never forget you. But when I returned to Singapore, she trailed off, unable to voice the painful separation. Baku listened, then a gentle smile touched his lips as he took her hand. My life and my work here will not change, Sarah. And if, one day, you choose to come back, we will meet again. His calm understanding, his unwavering affection, and his respect for her situation moved Sarah to tears. It was only as their farewell loomed that the true depth of their bond became undeniable. They cherished every remaining moment, sharing quiet walks, observing the daily rhythms of village life and laughing with the children. Just as Sarah was finalizing her return flight to Singapore, her old job waiting, another crisis struck Baku's family. A distant relative living near the Mozambican border passed away unexpectedly, and Baku's family, already struggling, faced the additional burden of funeral expenses and cultural obligations. Simultaneously, Baku's dream of building a small, permanent structure for his community school had stalled due to a lack of funds for materials. Sarah wrestled with her conscience. Her mind knew the practicalities. Her family and friends in Singapore kept reminding her, "Volunteer work is just that, Sarah. It's time to come back to reality." But her heart remained firmly in Malawi with Baku. In a decision that would astound everyone, including herself, Sarah informed her parents and her former employer, "I'm not coming back to Singapore. Not yet. I'm staying here, with Baku. I want to help build this community." The initial reactions were of shock and disbelief. It was an audacious, perhaps reckless decision. But Sarah was resolute. Together with Baku, she envisioned establishing a small educational center, continuing the work of the aid organization on a local level. The financial and practical challenges were mountainous, but with Baku by her side, she felt an unshakable belief that they could overcome them. And so, Saratana Toapeo, Singapore, chose Malawi. She didn't return to her HDB flat or her corporate career. Instead, she collaborated with the existing aid organization to transition into a long-term local support role. Baku, with renewed vigor, rallied his neighbors and friends, and together, they began the slow, painstaking work of constructing the small schoolhouse. Sarah used her marketing skills and international connections to network with potential donor organizations and secure resources. The villagers, initially wary, gradually opened their hearts, witnessing the couple's unwavering dedication. Baku's mother, now recovered, embraced Sarah as a daughter. The village children, already fond of Auntie Sarah, eagerly practiced the few English and even Singlish phrases she taught them, giggling at the unfamiliar sounds. At village celebrations, Sarah and Baku would often be seen dancing together, a joyful fusion of cultures. Over time, the barriers of nationality, race, and language seemed to melt away. They celebrated their union with a traditional Malawian wedding, simple, heartfelt, and filled with the warmth of the community. Eva, fellow volunteers and villagers showered them with handmade gifts, shared food, and heartfelt blessings. Sarah shared the books and knowledge she brought from Singapore, gradually enhancing the children's educational opportunities. Baku, meanwhile, spearheaded a local farming cooperative, aiming to create more sustainable livelihoods for the community. Years passed. The small schoolhouse Baku had dreamed of, built with Sarah's resourcefulness and the community spirit, now buzzed with a new generation of learners. Sarah, fluent in Chichewa and a beloved figure, often shared stories of Singapore's vibrant hawker stalls while teaching, just as Baku would explain the nuances of Malawian farming to visiting friends. From Sarah's past life, their home, a modest but welcoming space, was a testament to two worlds woven into one. Sometimes, under the vast African sky, Sarah would feel a nostalgic pang for the electric pulse of Singapore, the taste of chicken rice, the familiar cadence of Singlish with her family. But then Baku would take her hand, his eyes reflecting the same steadfast love that had first anchored her to this land. And she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. Their love story wasn't a fairy tale, but a testament to courage, commitment, and the extraordinary connections that can blossom in the most unexpected corners of the world. It was a quiet melody played out against the backdrop of Salima's red earth and endless skies, a song of two hearts beating as one, a constant reminder that home isn't just a place, but where love resides, transcending every imaginable border. And in their shared gaze, there was always a deep, unwavering trust and affection that no frontier could ever divide. A love story that continued to write itself, day by day, under the African sun.